Welcome to What's Brewing with IAT Insurance Group, where episode after episode we cover the latest marketplace trends with subject matter experts who are fueling our mission to provide insurance answers together. Grab your cup and let's settle in.
Hi, I'm Nicole Kirby, and welcome to What's Brewing. I'm the AVP of Marketing and Analytics for our Commercial Transportation business unit here at IAT, and I'm joined by a couple of my friends and colleagues today. Pete Matthews. Pete's our SVP for our Commercial Truck segment. That's part of our Commercial Transportation unit as well. And we're also joined by one of our resident loss control specialists, Jared Fritts. Thank you for both joining me today.
Hi, Nicole. How you doing, Jared?
Hey, guys. Good morning. How we doing?
Good morning.
Great.
So let's get into it. So today I want to talk about some trends that you're both seeing in the trucking industry. And one specific topic that I find interesting is the uptick in cargo theft. One thing I find interesting as well is I heard the term strategic cargo theft. What is that exactly?
Yeah, it's interesting. We do see upticks in theft, particularly when the economy gets tough. And right now we're in this inflationary period. So obviously the value of that cargo has increased dramatically at a time when people are struggling, with inflation. So theft is increasing. We see it both in terms of equipment and in terms of cargo. And it's funny. I've heard that term strategic cargo theft too. And at first I'm like, what is that? Then the more I learned about it, and Jared's really the expert, so he'll talk a little bit more. I think he's better equipped to talk about some of the details of it. But when you think about it, it's really no more than just the evolution of how people steal things, right? I'm a little old school, so I think old school days, right? People would, they're going to steal cargo. They're probably going to wait for a truck to be parked somewhere in the dark on the side of the road, and they're going to go back another truck up to it. They're going to take a pair of bolt cutters, right? They're going to do it physically. They're going to break into the truck and they're going to steal the cargo. The old days, because I'm old and I like old TV shows and movies. Right? It's like the Bonnie and Clyde, right? They're going to steal money, right? To sort of put it in sort of terms everybody can understand. They would go and break into a bank, right? And they'd get into the vault and at gunpoint and they'd steal all the cash and then they'd take off, right? So, or maybe in the 70s and 80s, they'd hold up armored cars, right? So, but now, if you think of the way people steal money, right, it's all cyber. It's all done online, right? So the evolution of technology, and now the digitizing of everything that we do, people just they hack banks and they steal cash that way, right? So they're not. You see less of the the people holding up banks, and banks don't even hold a lot of cash. So and I think of strategic cargo theft as nothing more than sort of that evolution of using technology now to really steal cargo. I mean, and Jared's probably the expert on how they do some of this stuff. So, Jared, I don't know if you have you've probably seen some of this in your day.
Yeah. And thanks, Pete. I think you teed it up really well. And really what it is just the cargo theft landscape has just been changing for several years now, in the transportation industry. Just to kind of shed a little bit of light on it, some reports have strategic cargo theft increases as high as 430% year over year from 2022 to 2023. Cargo theft in general was up 57% in 2023 and up 46% in the first quarter of this year alone. The terms that we see most often in strategic cargo theft is impersonating a broker or a carrier and double brokering. Impersonating a carrier or a broker is exactly as it sounds. Cargo thieves will pretend to be a legitimate freight broker or carrier to secure a load from a shipper. And then once they do, they'll redirect that load to a point that they can offload that cargo. Double brokering has an additional step where a legitimate freight broker will tender a load to a fraudulent carrier. That fraudulent carrier is obviously using a stolen or a fake identity, and then rebrokers or double brokers that load out to a legitimate carrier for delivery after changing the destination. These thieves, as Pete said, these thieves are not what we would think of as, say, a crime of opportunity, like stealing a loaded tractor trailer that's unlocked at a truck stop. This is organized international crime rings that target specific commodities and specific shippers. And unlike traditional cargo theft, this type of theft is not geographically based at all. Thieves can be anywhere and target specific cargo and shippers anywhere. The average value of stolen shipments in the first quarter of this year was over $280,000.
Wow.
This goes to show that this is a very targeted and very sophisticated theft landscape that we're in right now and that we're trying to deal with in the transportation industry.
Yeah. Is there any specific type of cargo that they go after, especially since it's so sophisticated now, as you mentioned?
It's been, it's always that list that's been out there it hasn't changed a whole lot over the years, honestly. It's what you would think: alcohol, electronics, apparel, things like that. The one thing that has ticked up a lot is household goods over the years. And I guess, in my career doing this and talking about cargo theft, is you just have to put yourself in the mindset of what can be moved easily after it's stolen. And it's the exact type commodities that you would think, flat screen TVs, alcohol, apparel, things like that can be moved easily. And the thing is, there's buyers for this already. This is very rarely stolen loads or stolen shipments of, well, what do we do with it now? This is very organized, sophisticated crime rings that, if you read up on it too, they'll say there's orders out there. This is such a sophisticated landscape that we're in right now, to where, there's orders out there of, this is what I want stolen. And it's, obviously a much more sophisticated landscape than it's ever been before, trying to prevent this.
Wow.
Yeah. I even heard a story about, I have a particularly favorite tequila that gets made in Mexico. And I was looking for it, and I had one of the distributors that happened to be in the store that I was in said that they can't get it now because the one of the cartels, had stolen several loads of this tequila, and then you can see it, they resell it on the black market, and it goes for, a ridiculous amount of money because it's hard to get. So it is international, and it affects our economy, right? I mean, all this stuff that's stolen drives up the cost of insurance. It drives up for the truckers, which then drives up the cost of shipping goods, which we all pay for. So it really is pervasive, and it affects us all. Not to mention the fact that these poor truck drivers now have to pay higher premiums because we incur a lot more losses. But it is concerning, particularly with inflation, right? That now the value of all these loads has gone up. In the days of $100,000 cargo limit are largely behind us, unless they're hauling some pretty low value, low theft types of things.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, especially how it's up so much. So with that, saying that, how can trucking companies and drivers protect themselves against this type of theft?
Yeah, Nicole, with the strategic theft, we talked about it, being cyber oriented. It's really not that different than really all the things that we do day to day, as consumers or as employees of a company, right, to prevent, cyber crime, right? So if you work in a corporate setting, I know every day, it seems like every day, but it's probably every year, I get all the little emails saying I have to take all these classes to improve my awareness of, phishing and password theft and impersonating. There's all of these schemes that these guys have, and it seems like there's a whole industry of people just dreaming up how to steal things from people, and how to dream up new types of ideas around theft. So in new schemes, that's the word I was looking for. So it's the same kinds of things. I think it's password protection. It's being aware. Jared talked about some of the examples, I think, of people impersonating other carriers. How do you vet these people? So if you're a broker, making sure you're vetting that carrier that you're going to broker that load to. It's having all those internal controls in place. And of course, I think these guys, being an insurance person, they probably should have cyber crime insurance. So I think there's multiple ways you've got to protect yourself from this. I don't know, Jared, what do you see as best practices as you're out there? I mean, you spend a lot of time out with our customers.
Yeah. And, the one thing, that you said that's absolutely correct is the one thing when it comes to strategic cargo theft, the one thing, whether it's, the impersonating or double brokering, the one thing that they have in common is a stolen or fraudulent identity to access this cargo, that they're after. That goes along with what Pete said, just having good security practices in place. A lot of, say, a smaller maybe not mom and pop, but a small to medium type fleet, maybe they're not putting an emphasis, on that cybersecurity like a big corporation is, like we do at IAT Insurance Group. And that's why we try getting the word out about this. Some of the best practices that I see, to try preventing this, and a lot of it's common sense. Some of it's maybe not quite, on top of your head what you would think of, but just, kind of a few notes I made that go along with it is you got to screen your new partnerships extensively. And this goes from vetting potential carriers, vetting brokers that you do business with, and even vetting customers to make sure that you're doing business with who you think you're doing business with. You got to remember too, if you're a carrier, or you're a carrier with brokerage operations, you have to remember it is very, very easy. It's as simple as looking at a door sign on your truck to find your company name, DOT number, MC number, that at least gets you in the door, that a potential thief at least has that basic information, or it's as simple as a search, an FMCSA search online, to pull that general information that's public information. Rule number one, I would say, in my book, is you just have to vet your partnerships as good as you can. Another thing that I would have is be suspicious. What both those strategic cargo theft, types that we're seeing in the industry right now have in common is a lot of times is a redirected load. Once that load is tendered out, it's redirected to get to a place where it can be offloaded. It's one thing to I guess in the first phase of it, having that fraudulent carrier, having access to that load. It's another thing to physically getting it. So I would say, number two would be very, very suspicious of any changes to delivery locations once a load is in transit. You just have to be unbelievably suspicious if that changes while it's already tendered to you. Any phone call coming from another country, like we said earlier, this is organized crime rings that are doing this. This isn't theft of just opportunity at the right time and the right place like we've seen in years past with, unsecure parking, trailer doors being unlocked, things like that at a truck stop or a shipper location. This is organized crime. If you're getting a number, if you're a broker, a shipper, a carrier, you're getting an offer that's too good to be true, or that number is coming from a number that's out of the country, be very suspicious of it. If you're a shipper or freight broker, search your inspection history. There's a lot of, while the public information that's out there can be negative if you're being targeted because potential thieves have access to some of this information, it can also benefit you if you're doing a good job of doing your due diligence. And what I mean by that is if a carrier was calling you up, you're a shipper, you're a freight broker, you're a carrier that has brokerage operations, a carrier is calling you up and they're interested in 10 loads from the Northwest, and you pull up their inspection history and they haven't traveled there in 2 years and they have absolutely no history of ever getting inspections in the Northwest and all they travel is in the Southeast, that should raise some red flags to you. Maybe it's showing that they have 3 trucks and they're wanting 5 loads tendered, to them with 3 trucks. There's just some common sense stuff there to where you can look at and it can raise some red flags if you're doing your research, on the front end before you're tendering loads out and, along those lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. This really is just an evolution of crime, right? And it's going to continue. This will continue to evolve, over time. I mean, if you think about back in the day, Jared, I would imagine a lot more loads. Think 60s, 70s, 80s they were contract loads, right? The brokers, the evolution of the sophisticated broker networks that we have in place today to really make the process more efficient for everybody, for shippers and trucking firms, motor carriers, but it does present other opportunities, right? There's always a weakness in any new system that you put in place, and I'm sure this isn't the end, right? As technology evolves into whatever it evolves into in the future, this will continue to evolve. You have to stay vigilant and evolve with it. Things that we had in place from a control standpoint 30, 40, 50 years ago don't work today.
Yeah, Pete, you remember the old trip leasing days, right?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
you'd know your buddy down the road who ran a trucking company and they're basically just running under your door sign, and it's not like that now. You don't have personal relationships with everybody that you're doing business with. It's just not practical, in this day and age like it was back then in old trip leasing days. Brokerage operations don't work like that now.
No, much more sophisticated. Yeah, the old days are gone. But yeah, I mean, you can't. I'm sure in some places that probably still happens, but not often.
Well, great conversation. It just really makes you think and really makes you wonder, like, what is the next step with this process, the evolution of this crime? So thank you for spending some time with me today and providing some great information. And thank you for listening to What's Brewing, and we'll see you next time.
Providing insurance answers together is what we do best. Thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of What's Brewing. Until next time.